Lars, how are you today?
Hello, Jacob, Muzammil. Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure. So, why did you choose the tech as your career, and what's motivate you in your tech field?
Yeah, I actually did a lot of things before tech, but ended up in tech and have been here for 11 years or so. Why I ended up here? Well, I always liked tinkling, tinkering with computers. Always liked deconstructing and constructing things, Legos, engines, toys, electronics, computers, anything like that. So I think it's a natural interest in how things work and making them work and so on. And that is a pleasant side of software development, to me at least.
Mm-hmm. That's really
So, like in your, yeah, sure, Jacob,
no, I was
please.
just gonna say that's really cool because
No,
same basic interest, same kind of like previous history of like kind of deconstructing. That's kind of why I'm here too. Now I've not been here obviously as long as you, but it's still been really entertaining and kind of cool to learn a bunch of stuff. That's really cool. Didn't know anyone else really kind of shared that mindset, so I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that like, do you make some incredible application in your starts that motivate and pushes you towards the web technologies, or something that you have done greatly in your earlier career?
Well, I to be frank, I did start early, very young with web development, but just as an interest. That was back in 2000 or 2001, something like that, where I learned HTML for the first time. And then I built some things for fun and for social events and things like that. But
Yeah, sure. I was gonna say, so like you said, you kind of started kind of doing it on your own and then getting into it, and this is kind of like within getting into your career and all the stuff you do now. Having kind of started, in web development and over the last 11 years, and even before that, it sounds like, is there anything kind of recently we've seen a lot of different trends, whether that's, AI integration stuff, integrations with things like blockchain and stuff like that. Is there anything that, lately has been happening that could be, and it could be like a really small thing, could be a really big thing, but just like in the field of web development that, that's kind of got you excited for what the potential, kind of down the line could come out from it?
well, I'm what's called a GitHub star, so I get early access and give early feedback on GitHub products. And I've been using GitHub Copilot for more than 2 years, and it's become an integral part of my development, whether that's open source or professionally. It's really it's a boost in productivity. You learn things, and the features it's been getting lately are like even more useful. Like even just the auto completion was the first thing, but now it's fully integrated with GitHub Copilot Chat, which is like Chat GPT, but it understands your code base. And now the most recent development is that soon we can create our own GitHub Copilot Chat agents, where you can build like a plugin. You can say add and then the name of the plugin. So maybe I would build an agent for NX, another technology that I'm fond of. And it could answer me questions on how to do things or things with NX, or I could ask it to generate things using the NX CLI, or ask it questions from the NX documentation in my editor. I think that's really incredible. You could also make one for your organization or for your open source project like NX. I think that's really interesting. I'm also looking into Microsoft Copilot plugins using OpenAI and other AI services from Azure. I think that's interesting as well, and I think that'll become important for businesses to make or buy the right Microsoft Copilot plugins for their business. So I see a lot of potential in this. You mentioned blockchain. That has never really been my thing. But I believe highly in GitHub Copilot, and I'm also really optimistic about Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat as that, because we've I don't know about the GitHub specifically, but I do know, like, as far as kind of the way we've been able to see these things be integrated, and like, again, like the chatbots especially, whether it's helping you solve a problem or helping kind of customers, get around a website, anything as basic as that. That's really, really impressive what we're seeing too, and we've kind of got us excited as well, because just seeing, what in the future can be done, as far as potential and stuff like that. And then, on that note, it kind of, we've also been looking at it a lot from kind of the perspective of clients coming to the website, or for anything, whether it's us, whether it's someone else, things like that, and just helping with that process, whether it's onboarding or just accessibility, and anything like that. It's really, even the early stuff now, I say, I feel like it's been kind of less than a year almost, it's very quickly how we kind of ramped up to this point in time. Really, really cool.
Yeah.
But then, with that, the integrations and kind of possibilities are almost endless, it seems, at this point in time. But like you, we're kind of very hopeful and quietly hopeful, just seeing how people kind of integrate stuff and really taking it from there, kind of doing more with it. And then in that, I guess in that context, have you guys, or you, with anything, whether it's directly related to that or even just general items pertaining to kind of web development, stuff like that, is there any kind of best practices, with this, with the integrations, with the chat stuff, or even just in general, as far as kind of creating that user-friendly and kind of really accessible, web applications, or any basically web development related products? Is there kind of anything, from your perspective, as far as best practices, especially with integrating some of the chat stuff, but, kind of anything else you wanted to speak to on that in your experience?
Yeah, so what I'm aware of, there's a few things I'd like to mention.
Mhm.
Microsoft created this sort of building blocks for AI, generative AI in particular, called Semantic Kernel. And it has SDKs available for C#, Java, and Python. So no JavaScript and TypeScript, which I'm sad about, but maybe someday. But they also have Azure OpenAI NPM packages, for example. So there's Azure OpenAI clients, but then that's lower level than the semantic kernel. So you have to do more things on your own to make it integrate well. Whereas the semantic kernel, you're already part of the way there. So you're not starting from scratch and using low-level APIs to build your AI, whether it's a GPT, a custom GPT, or a custom Copilot plugin, or just using the Azure OpenAI service or other Azure AI services, for example. So I think that's really interesting. Another thing recently was at GitHub Universe, Scott Hanselman from Microsoft, the VP of Developer Community, who's well known. He had a keynote at the very end of GitHub Universe. You can go find it on the GitHub Universe website, or maybe YouTube even. And that was a lot more interesting than I thought, this keynote of his. It's called something like AI Superhero or Supervillain. And it goes into like what the good and the bad sides, obviously, of AI. But it was also about how we can tweak AI, like chatbot agents, things like that. There are several factors that matter to how useful it is, but also whether it can be hacked easily, jailbreaked, how it will respond to people. So there's this notion of a system agency. So you can instruct the AI to what it's in general, which tasks it's provided with doing, whether it's answering support questions in your business, or whether it's supporting developers in programming, or supporting developers and business employees in questions about the systems or documentation, anything like that. And also whether it's supposed to be friendly or professional, things like that. So you can set the mood or the setting, the environment, the agency of this chat agent. I think that's interesting. And there's all these temperatures of various things, like how predictable is its answers, and how out of the box thinking does it seem to be. Like, will it give you the same answer each time you ask it the same question? And that maybe you want it to do that when you're asking about compliance, for example. But if you're using it to get inspiration for writing a book or a course or a tutorial, maybe you want it to be more creative. You want it to be your peer, right? So so those are interesting thoughts. But also this new era of copilots and ChatGPT, it is something like programming but with language. So it's programming for ordinary people, but we have to integrate the plugins and agents for them to use it and to understand better what they are asking the AI to do. But when we do that provided with the data sources and the right integrations, then regular people, so to speak, or non-tech savvy people can all of a sudden get it to do things that are not specifically programmed. So it's not an application developed to do just whatever feature is in the feature set. It's all of a sudden it's more generic. For example, you can give it access to your data sources, and someone can ask it to make a specific report or integrate it into Excel spreadsheets or whatever, where before they might have been necessary to ask a developer to run some export scripts from a database or whatever your data sources are and try to combine that and so on. So it can really be empowering to non-tech savvy, non-developer people. I think that's really exciting. But we have to learn how to use these AIs. The prompt is really important, both in making it understand the words that the user is describing on how to do certain tasks, but also that the user knows how to describe it in enough detail that it knows what you're really asking it to do. If you just write one sentence or one phrase, that might not be enough. Maybe the more detail, background detail you can add, the more specific you can get, the better an answer you can get. So it's like if someone asks one of us to develop some new application, the more details we get, the better the chances are they will get what they are asking for. I mean, sometimes the customer doesn't really know what they need. So sometimes, I mean, it's you have to talk about it. You have to get feedback in both directions. But of course, the more detailed the explanation can be, and the more details you can get from the customer, the better a job you can do at delivering what they need and what they expect. So it's the same thing here. The more context you can give to these AI agents, the better the result, the better the outcome for the user. So that's important. And as a user of AI, it's important to be aware of that you need to ask for very specific things to get great results. And another thing is some of them have what's called memory. So they keep, it's like having a thread, meaning like a thread on whatever social media, that you're having a discussion. These are not just unrelated posts. You're having a discussion about one topic. So the AI agent will know what you were just talking about or asking about in your previous chat message. So some AI agents have that, others don't. The ones who have, when you want to start talking about new topic, it's better to say clear the thread or whatever, so it starts with a clean context. Otherwise, it'll keep answering you in the context of your original message, which might not always make sense. Sometimes you're happy with the result you got, and now you want to move on to the next discussion. So you need to clear. But if you are expecting a chat agent to have that memory, and you're asking it something, and it doesn't make sense what it's answering. Maybe it's because it doesn't have that memory, but you weren't aware of that. You're used to AIs with memory, so you assume that it can remember the conversation you have been having with it for the past 10 minutes, but it seems like it's not answering in the context of the discussion you're having. So maybe that's because it doesn't have memory.
So let's move towards like another side of the discussion. So my question is to you is what you think that are some best practices for creating a user-friendly and accessible web application that you have created, and what are your recommendations for like a software engineer with 1 year or 2 year of experience, so that when it goes live, it doesn't crash, or if somebody else is working on it, it can easily be extendable, something like that. So what are your recommendations or best practices?
Well, I was about to say collaborate with a UX designer, but to get the best result for the user, but for preventing crashing and things like that, then we're talking more about, from my experience, we're talking more about automation, like automated CI checks or automated tests, external code quality checks that are automated, things like that.
And what is your opinion on the bootstrap application, like bootstrap code or no code applications where you don't have to write the entire code, you just have to drag and drop? For example, if we talk about bubble.io, or we have some I think Webflow or something which has no code application. So what are your opinions or suggestions on that? Are those applications are extendable, or what are your opinion on that?
Okay, so we're talking about low code and no code solutions.
Yeah.
Well, I like code. I love that when AI can help me generate that code, but at the end of the day, I prefer code to reason about. But I've also seen people that are excellent at, for example, integration systems like Azure Integration Services, or informally BizTalk, where it's part of it is a visual programming language where you drag and drop integrations and data sources and mappings and things like that. But eventually you end up needing to write some code. And now your code is stuck inside of some whatever system, maybe just in an input field. There's no backup, there's no versioning. Maybe there is, but you are not in control of this version control system. So if it goes down, you have lost your code. If the provider goes bankrupt, you have lost your code. That's your intellectual property. If there's a new version, how do you migrate? So it comes with other trade-offs, because it's rare that you can go fully without any custom code somewhere in that process. So those are some trade-offs you need to be aware of.
Yeah, so it's not a long-term thing. Like it's just for the MVP and just for testing the application, that how will it will work in a pool of 100 people. So you can go with no code application for making the things in general, but not for the specific application.
I mean, depends on your team and their experience. If they are highly experienced in any of these low code, no code platforms, it can be a good solution. But if your team are software developers that prefer code, then low code, no code will not do a lot to support them and make them more productive. So it depends on the people you have and the use cases that you have. Because if all you need is mapping of data and integrating data sources, maybe low code or no code is a great solution. But as soon as you need something other than that, then you have to go over to a solution that's more code based.
Okay. So for example, if you are making an application and you have like 1,000 people will be using this application, but when you go in the market and for example, after like a year or so, your application is used by like thousands of people, like 10,000 or 20,000 people. So what things do you think that we should keep in mind so that our application doesn't crash when we go live, or like more people are using at concurrently, so it doesn't crash? So what do you think, or what your suggestion on it?
Well, we are lucky today because we live in the age of cloud. So we have very highly scalable solutions available to us without having to write a custom platform or pay too much money for it. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I prefer Azure as cloud provider, but there are similar solutions with other cloud providers. But something like Cosmos DB is a planet scale database with geo redundancy, serverless, whatever you need. So that's low maintenance from an infrastructure perspective, and you can tweak it to your needs. So you can have geo redundancy if you need that. You can have maybe you can even start with what's it called, like a pay per use, so that if it's not being used, you're paying zero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pay as you go plans.
Yeah, pay as you go. Yeah, but then maybe later you need something with higher SLA, so greater uptime and geo redundancy. Well, then you upgrade to a paid plan instead and get those features. But even from the beginning, you can do the prototype with pay as you go, or even as you're growing the product and there's not a lot of users, then you're not paying for having servers running 24/7 that are not being used. But they will be available 24/7, but when they're not used, you won't pay for them. So I think things like that is really powerful to software developers and companies.
What are your suggestions or any feedback to the people in the field of software engineering? Like anything you want to add?
Well, what I like to promote is openness and transparency. That works well both for open source and for collaborating in a company, whether that's inside of a team or across teams or across an entire organization. Mm-hmm. But the tendency is to not being to be more closed. But also in open source, despite the name, some open source projects are very closed in their culture, in their how they approach newcomers, beginners, and just being open to everyone in the world rather than just a specific group of people. So that's something that's worth practicing, is being more open to your team, being more open to the other teams you work with or the entire organization. But also that also goes for open source, being open and making sure that onboarding is pleasant, whether you want to join as an open source maintainer, or you want to make your first contribution, or you want to use the open source project. All of those different groups of people need different things from your project. And whether it's open source or inner source or just between a couple of teams, it pays off to think about these situations and makes the collaboration easier.
Thanks a bunch, Lars. It was very good to meet you and to talk to you.
Yeah,
likewise.
All right, awesome.
See you.
Take care.
Bye.